So in this video I want to talk about how to multiply two or more fractions together. Multiplying fractions is probably one of the more easier operations you can perform on a pair of fractions, so here's how we do it. Basically what we do is we multiply the top two numbers together to form the numerator, and then multiply the bottom two numbers together to form the denominator. And it really is that simple, because after that we just simplify our fraction down by cancelling any common factors the numerator and the denominator might have, and then we've got our answer. So I've got a few examples for you, so let's try the first example. So we've got 1 over 3, or 1/3, times 2/5, or 2 over 5. And basically what we do is we just multiply the top two numbers together, so we've got 1 times 2, and then we divide by the bottom two numbers multiplied together, so we've got 3 times 5. So over 3 times 5, so just the top two divided by the bottom two multiplied together. So simplifying, we've got 1 times 2, which is just 2, and on the bottom we've got 3 times 5, which is just 15. And obviously 2 and 15 don't share any common factors. So this is the fraction in its simplest form. Let's try another example. In this example we've got 1 over 10 times 1 over 2, or 1/10 times 1/2 if you like. As before, we multiply the top two numbers together, so we've got 1 times 1 on the top, that's the top two numbers, and we divide that by the bottom two numbers. The bottom two numbers are 10 and 2, so it's just 10 times 2. So 10 times 2. 1 times 1 is obviously just 1. And 10 times 2 is 20. And again, this is the fraction in its simplest form. So let's look at our last example. Let's look at the product of three fractions, so 1/2 times 3/5 times 4 over 7. And we do exactly the same thing as we did before. We just got to multiply together three numbers on the top and three numbers on the bottom. It's exactly the same thing, just with an extra fraction to deal with. So on the top we've got 1 times 3 times 4, the product of the three numbers on the top, the product of the three numerators. So that's 1 times 3 times 4. And we divide that by the product of the denominators, and the denominators are 2, 5, and 7. So we've got 2 times 5 times 7. So 2 times 5 times 7. Well, let's deal with this bit by bit. We know that 1 times 3 is just 3. So if I put that in brackets, and let's put these in brackets too, well 1 times 3 is 3, and I've got a times 4 to deal with later, divided by 2 times 5 times 7. Well, 2 times 5 is 10 times 7. Now if we complete the final stage of multiplication, we've got 3 times 4 on the top, and 3 times 4 is 12. And on the bottom we've got 10 times 7, and 10 times 7 is 70. Now 12 and 70 are both even numbers, so they share a common factor of 2. So I'm going to divide 12 and 70 by 2. I'm going to halve them. So when I halve this fraction, I get, well, 12 divided by 2 is 6. Half of 12 is 6. And half of 70 is 35, because 35 times 2 is 70. And now this fraction is in its simplest form. None of these two numbers share any common factors, so I've simplified my fraction as far as it can go. So that's how we multiply two fractions together.